Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
I wonder how many of our listeners can say that they got to watch TV for a living? If you did, write into us and we'd love to hear your story as well. As was with our guest in today's episode, who's an engineer and started her career working with TV set-top boxes. She's managed to find and build a career around what she calls building software for tangible hardware and has enjoyed building products for a variety of use cases. Anu Kannan has perhaps had unique opportunities to truly step into customers' shoes and experience a day in their lives. Experiences that she treasures and believes in, so she's consciously building products that are inclusive, unbiased, and servicing customer needs. She's played a variety of roles in her career so far and actively creates circles of trust with continuous networking across departments to ensure the right collaboration while building products. Anu shares candid insights into how to create a culture of innovation and her recipe for learning about people and cultures through her vast travels. She leaves us with a glimpse of what the future of the automotive industry could look like, and as always, she has a message for aspiring engineers. Listen on. So, hello, Anu. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Software People Stories. It's lovely to be talking to you, and I've certainly been looking forward to this conversation. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I'm glad to be here.
So, we usually ask our guests to introduce themselves to our listeners. How would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Anu Kannan, and I've been in the software industry for close to 17 years now. It's always largely been on the embedded side of software. I started my career on set-top boxes, moved on to mobile computers, and more recently working on the Android automotive group. So I currently work as a partner technology manager at Google, and my job is to kind of share specific Google Android technologies with various car manufacturers. So it's a pretty fun role. Prior to this, I was at Zebra Technologies, which used to be Motorola. I was a fellow of engineering there, focusing on Android-based rugged mobile computers, barcode scanners, primarily in the enterprise space. I've had the good fortune of traveling a lot, working across multiple locations, working on a lot of innovative products. So it's definitely been a great journey so far. From an education point of view, I did my bachelor's in telecommunication from RBC. I received a master's of science in computer science from NYU. And more recently, as of last week, I completed the lead program from Stanford. On a personal note, I'm a mom of two. I have a 3-year-old toddler and a 3-month-old. They kind of, keeping me particularly busy these days.
Wow, Anu, that's a lot that you've packed in 17 years. And I can already see at least 5 questions coming in my mind to ask you, ranging from, what's Android doing in the automotive space and where do you see things headed and so on. But before we get there, how did this whole journey into the tech world and software begin for you? What was your inspiration or motivation? Did you always want to be an engineer?
I'm like the quintessential software engineer, from Bangalore. Growing up in the 80s, software was everywhere. At least burgeoning everywhere. So my folks, neighbors were tinkering with it. In undergrad, my friends were building computers. You know how it was. So it was like, technology was the job du jour, kind of thing in college. So I hopped onto the bandwagon as well. From a campus placement point of view, I joined Infosys. I was exposed to a lot of server-side software, but I didn't particularly find that exciting. So when a good friend recommended, I joined this newish company called NDS. I decided to switch, and that really kickstarted my journey in embedded product development. And I felt like that was more, I could relate to it a lot more. NDS was, a little known company back then with, fewer than 100 employees. And they were working on even little known technology, on set-top boxes. Nonetheless, it was an excellent experience. I'm glad I joined. I used to joke that I got to watch got to watch TV for a living. But now it's everywhere, right? Like Tata Sky and boxes in India, and globally, most satellite and cable folks use leverage NDS. So I was there for about 4 years, truly formative years. Worked with multiple cultures globally. Worked at different locations. We focused a lot on innovation, on scaling both technology and the company. So exciting years for sure. And that's when I also, like I said, I also realized that I like building software for tangible hardware. See them being applied in real use cases that I'd experience daily. And given the boom in mobile technology, there were plenty of opportunities. So when I moved to Motorola, I made the conscious decision to move to Motorola to work on the mobile industry. The team, the group I was working on then got acquired by Zebra. While the technology focus on innovation and collaboration between different locations was similar between NDS and Motorola, the use cases were very, very different, right? So at Zebra, the products we built were, very hands-on, were used by nurses, store associates, postal workers. So it was extremely fascinating, to see what we built, helping all those, use cases. So from a logical progression perspective, I joined Google and joined their automotive division. So now I'm looking to shape the vehicle industry for the years to come. Yeah, so hope that answers your question.
Certainly, Anu, and thank you so much. In fact, when you talked about, use cases where nurses and postal workers are actually using a combination of your software for tangible hardware, what have been some of the most challenging use cases that you've come across, and how did you feel that shaped you or your mind as an engineer?
So when we worked on set-top boxes, even though the use case was entertainment, it's something that's so basic to everyone, right? Like everyone wraps up their, work, and what do? We plop it onto the couch and watch TV. So it's one of the most basic experiences that we had back in the day and continue to do so even today, even though the mediums changed, slightly. So having that in mind and designing, was definitely quite the challenge. You had you couldn't disrupt the end user. In terms of a user experience, it was paramount to have the right experiences. And moving on to the more mission critical thing, that was so much more because you had, like, say, a FedEx driver drive out, you couldn't have the device conk on him, or so. The challenges that you faced in terms of memory and battery life and just availability were so paramount that the factors or the boxes within which you design a product are fundamentally different when it comes to these use cases.
That was certainly helpful to understand use cases. So, as an engineer, what would you share in terms of your learnings with respect to understanding these user-specific scenarios or keeping the customer in mind when you are trying to design and integrate multiple small systems? Because the system that you described seems to be pretty complex.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to sound cliched, but when you talk about design thinking, it's all about empathy and it's all about understanding the end user. So I would just reiterate that, I mean, it's not enough, to emphasize that or, stress that. So growing up, my dad had his own small scale industry. So his products would end up in a lot of factories, across the country and neighboring countries. So he would take us along to those factories and we do site visits with him, and he'd show us the end-to-end process of how things were made and how things occurred. So that kind of created a sense of curiosity while growing up, and that was more than satiated with my roles at my work front, right? So I would go along on a lot of job shadows and earlier on in my career, and later on, actively visiting customers and sites and, seeing how a warehouse worked or how a hospital, what was a typical day would be like, for a nurse. Or I actually even applied for a job to just get at a local retailer to see what a typical day in their life would be like, right? So having that unique perspective of what their challenges were and what their priorities were was something that we should all focus on and take that back to the drawing board. And even if you may not integrate it per se, like the fact that you have all that experience on the back of your mind, I believe would, shape or, influence your product development. It will be a little more inclusive, free of biases, and, in general, more productive. Likewise, also working with different teams within the company. It's not always about software when it comes to hardware product. There's electrical, there's mechanical, there's user experience. And there are all these different teams that work together to bring something to life. So having great relationships with all of them, both on and off work, I believe I found to really shape and mold my decisions. Having a chat with a user experience person to understand their perspectives and what worked and what didn't work, or having a conversation with a mechanical engineer on their challenges. I think all of that together shapes you, shapes your thinking, and makes you better informed when you make your decisions.
Very nice, Anu. In fact, that must have been such an interesting and unique experience to be walking the lines or walking the floor with your dad to see how things were taking shape, who was consuming them, and so on. This is a fabulous experience, and I'm sure many listeners who either are looking to be engineers or simply understand how the whole end-to-end of products and solutions works would have a lot to take away. So thank you so much for sharing that. You said that, you were a fellow of engineering at some point in time. What was that role like? How were you able to leverage your position in that role to either influence, improve collaboration, or, guide people as you played that role?
I don't want to say that role changed what I was doing, but I was playing a role of, at a corporate level, for couple of years prior to the actual promotion. So I would keep the title and the promotion aside. I think I'd rather just focus on what I was contributing to and, what I was trying to achieve at the company. And the fact that I had a really great supportive manager and higher ups, a lot of people in a given company realize what needs to be done. And, once you identify a good strategy or direction in which you want the company to go towards, it's not always the projects that are funded or the above the line kind of projects, but there are certain projects that go above and beyond, and you need to have different teams work together, different divisions, entire divisions, whose P&Ls are different, working together to make that a success. So I was actually working on one such transformative project, and my story at the company, the different projects I worked on kind of led, to taking that on. And along the way, the fact that I'd worked at different centers with different teams, different people, I built a huge network of trust and professionalism, right? Like I knew a lot of people, so that really helped. Getting that promotion was just yet another step, to that platform where you can truly influence and cause changes in the right direction. So like a earlier mentor of mine would say, what is the right thing for the business to do, right? Is this the right thing to do? And you go ahead and do that, kind of baby steps in the right direction, so to speak. So I think having a title definitely helps. It gives you that much more leverage, but a lot can be done even without it, because once you have your work speak for itself, sorry, right? And you have other people speaking on your behalf. If you had that passion and if you're driving things with no bias, and doing the right thing, you can build that influence, without necessarily having the title.
Nicely put. Thank you. What would you say can create a culture of innovation in an organization from your experience? What do you think are those essential elements that could first create and then sustain such a culture?
That's a very, very good question, right? Because it's easy for everyone to say, everyone wants to be innovative. No company does not want to be innovative, but actually converting that idea into action is pretty it can be challenging, right? Let me put it that way. First of all, I think it's the mindset, right? The fundamental mindset of the people you hire. It starts from when you hire. Getting in the right folks, getting in the folks with the right mindset, the whole solution mindset as opposed to problem mindset kind of folks. Folks are willing to take risks, who are, are tenacious, are persevering. So I think getting the right folks is the first step along the way. And thereafter, I think it's defining to some extent what you want to innovate in. Is it your core? Is it your context? Is it something that you don't want to do innovation just for the sake of innovation? So I think having some senior folks who are very, very well versed with the industry you're in, come and set some high level boundaries on what you want to innovate in would be the next challenge. And then after that, having a pretty reasonably well defined process around innovation would be the third, right? So you have your people, you have your process, and then trying to come up with a good framework for innovation would be the third. And none of this would be possible if you don't know your customers really well. So as part of defining the scope of what you're innovating, you also need to have a very good handle on who you're innovating for. Of course, you can have some serendipitous fallout, and you may end up innovating for more or a different fraction than who you initially anticipated. But nonetheless, going in with the right problem statement to solve, I think would make your life a lot easier. So this is more on a framework front. In reality, also executing on it can be challenging. So being totally okay with ambiguity, being totally okay with failing and retrying, all of that needs to be built into the culture, not just at an engineer level, but also through your management. You obviously need the funds to be able to innovate. I think a few different aspects all need to fall into place together to truly have, to truly be innovative and then be successful at it.
Yeah, those are absolutely powerful statements, Anu. Thank you so much. Very inspiring as well. You said you've traveled a lot. You've met different kinds of people. How has that experience influenced your work? And what would you share as tips or good practices to develop those relationships, whether it's with customers or, like you said, building a network of trust? What have you learned from those experiences that you can share?
To me, that is like the most fundamental principle, or like value, if you will, that I value the most. Earlier on in my career itself, like with my first the NDS company I spoke about, that was like 3 years of non-stop travel. Like I worked in the UK, in the US, and Israel. And then when I moved to Motorola again, I visited dev centers in China and Sri Lanka. It's been an extremely learning experience to just meet people from all different cultures and work with them, sit next to them and collaborate and work with them. And you get to learn from them both professionally. You get to hear about their stories and, how they grew up, which is just fascinating. But at the same time, a lot of them also opened up their houses, their families to me, which was equally precious. I'm still in touch with a lot of them from 10, 15 years ago. So all of that kind of shapes you for who you are. And you get a good sense of what people's, like I said earlier, right? Like people's priorities, people's motivations. And you bring all that back, into your both personality, both professionally and personally. So I think just traveling automatically gives you the food fodder, if you will, for having an open mind, for taking crazy risks, and just learning, right? You're learning all the time. So I was visiting Israel for the very first time, right? And this was back to back after I'd visited the UK and the US. So, and what I didn't realize was the office was in a very conservative, setting. It was in Jerusalem. And I met my colleague the first day, and I was introduced to him. And I obviously extended my hand to shake his hand. And next thing he took 3 steps back. Right, I was stunned. I was like, "What's going on?" And then the manager introducing us clarified that his wife had just had a baby, and in their culture they don't typically touch other women when their wives just had a baby. And that's when it hit me that I was so ill prepared. from a cultural perspective of what I was in for. So I kind of went back that day and like spoke to a bunch of people, read up a few things. And, once you realize, some basic foundational aspects, they just need space and you kind of respect their culture. And I started putting that into practice from the very next day. And obviously, he recognized that, and our working relationship was so much smoother and so fruitful, right? So I think just taking the time to learn about other cultures, just like how you would learn the rules of driving when you go to a different country, just learning about their culture and being respectful of that and appreciating it, I think creates a very congenial environment, so to speak. I know COVID right now has thrown everything topsy-turvy, but I'm optimistic, that things will come back to normal. But even when you interact with someone digitally, over Zoom or, Hangouts or whatever, there are aspects of, this understanding and appreciating time zones, for example, languages is another example. All of that just helps build a better working relationship, particularly when the other person is, halfway across the world.
And like you said, right, during this time, there's, I think, going to all the more be challenges when working remotely is how do you sense someone's culture, or how do you sense what's going on with them when you're not standing in front of the other person. So I think this is going to give rise to perhaps innovation or sensing in a very different dimension when you need to work together across the world or collaboratively. In your current role, when you talk about Android for automotive, where do you see that space headed? Everybody is trying suddenly to make the car or any mobile vehicle a space where there is a lot more intelligence and a whole lot of things coming in. What's happening there, and what do you see as vehicles of the future?
There were like few different spaces that were gearing up for the next level of transformation, and automotive was definitely one amongst them. So in that space, I feel there are multiple transformations happening at the same time. And again, you can read up on this. I mean, there's connectivity happening, there's a lot of shared use cases coming up, a lot of autonomous vehicles, there's electrification of cars. So there are like multiple transformations happening at the exact same time, which is what makes it extremely challenging, at the same time extremely exciting. Where it's going is there's a lot of room for innovation, a lot of room to be more efficient, given our fuel challenges and lack of resources in the long term, challenges around that. So there's a lot of room for innovation to make the whole space more effective and eco-friendly and just economical, to say. This is just the beginning. If you look at the number of startups in the space, it's mind-boggling. So I think it's too early to call what will happen or where it's, who's going to survive, but you can definitely see where it's headed. At least in my opinion, will largely be electric, connected. There's going to be a lot more sharing involved of data, just to be more efficient. But at the same time, given COVID, one argument is, you will have a lot more road trips because they're safer than flying or taking the trains. So I think that may accelerate some of the innovation in the space. But long story short, I think you will see a lot more digitization happening inside your car, much like what happened on your phone, but more within the car, and a lot more seamless experiences being enabled, as a matter of that fact. So exciting times for sure, but long way to go. And obviously safety is the primary factor. It's not like your phone where, you innovate on a new feature and you can roll it out. It will take our manufacturers considerable time to bake it in, make sure it's secure. You have regulations to cater to as well. So all for good reasons. So the industry by its very nature takes a lot of time to bake before it gets rolled out. It'll be a slow transformation, but a sure one at that.
That was a nice little shot of perhaps where things are and where they're likely to go. We spoke about a lot of things today, and I'm sure there are a lot of listeners who are very curious to know what to do in terms of work, what kind of career path should I pursue, and so on. So if you had something to share with people aspiring to be engineers today, what would your message be for them?
Couple of different things like we spoke about earlier, don't skimp on experiences. Any and all are good experiences. You get a chance to try something out new, just go for it. On the professional front, I would strongly say follow your passion if you have one. A lot of people don't, which is totally okay. In which case, whatever you decide to undertake, be passionate about it. Put in the work, put in the hours, work hard, try to learn everything about it. Do your bit, right? I always kept thinking to myself, if you're willing to learn, you'll find a lot of teachers. Just keep at it. That said, you do need to have a plan of some sort. You can't just, have some random set of experience, which is good, by the way. But nonetheless, from a professional perspective, having some sort of a high level plan is always good. Try to see if your past experiences, present, and where you plan to go can be woven into some formidable story of sorts, right? On the personal level, take risks, travel a lot, learn new things, be open to new experiences, read a lot. This will create a good environment of learning inside you, that will have a significant impact on everything you undertake. It'll facilitate a good mindset to help you network easily, be open and reach out to people easily, take on challenges easily. It just creates the right platform within you to be the best you possibly can. That positive attitude to focus on, what you know well, depending on, whichever situation you're in, right? And one last useful tip you said was for freshers would be try to maintain a career journal of sorts to kind of update at least once a year, or maybe even 6 months. Just simply journal what you achieved, how did you achieve, or why did you, how did it come about? If you failed, what did you learn from it? Just a very, very high level. So that will help you craft your story in the years to come. When memory starts failing you, or you've had so many experiences that you can't remember the nuances anymore. Worst case or best case, it'll come in handy in your interviews later on. Just having that simple journal, I think, would really be helpful. You'll thank yourself later on.
Thanks, Anu. That was really nice. It's been lovely having you on our show and talking to you. I hope we can have some more conversations in the future.
Sure, looking forward to it. And this was fun. Thanks for having me again.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Malavika for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.